Mayor, thanks for your time today. First off, my first question for you, why did you decide to run for re-election?
After some thoughtful deliberation, I concluded that what we've been able to accomplish in these first 3 years is important changes for our city as we prepare for the next 5 years. But most importantly is the fact that Republicans and Democrats have been coming together on fundamental and structural challenges that the city has in ways that are well, certainly unheard of in this political climate today. To have passed a 2019 operating budget unanimously, where every Republican elected leader, every Democratic elected leader on the council supported the budget. I think those types of accomplishments need to be carried into the future, because I think ultimately that kind of approach will not only address the structural challenges that the city faces, but bode well for the people of our city over the long term.
You campaigned 3 years ago as a crime fighter, former federal prosecutor. In your first 2 years as mayor, the number of murders in the city, each of those years, it's reached a new historic high, unfortunately. If you could give yourself a performance review when it comes to fighting violent crime, what would that review say?
Well, we're making progress. The challenges that Indianapolis face, really the gun violence, the level of gun violence Indianapolis has experienced has been increasing over the last 10 years. And the truth is that it has become a challenge the city faces from a multi-generational, intergenerational approach, which is a way of saying, I wish we had a magic wand where we could reverse numbers overnight, but that is frankly impractical. Any homicide in the city of Indianapolis is unacceptable. And the level of gun violence that too many of our neighborhoods have experienced needs to be addressed and is being addressed. I'm proud, for example, of the increased police presence, the 150 additional officers that by the end of 2019 we will have added to IMPD. I'm proud that they are now being deployed in a more comprehensive, community-based, neighborhood-oriented beat system. I'm proud of the nearly $4 million that the council authorized be spent in 2019 on crime prevention, crime reduction, crime intervention. I think those kinds of investments will help us stem the tide of violence in our city and begin the process of reversing it.
And you mentioned that you're proud of the new officers being hired. While those recruits are coming in, there's also more officers leaving than expected. As of today, 103 officers have left this year through attrition, including 24 who didn't make it through training. And as you know, the department expected just 69 to leave this year. Why are that many officers leaving, and what will you do in the future to retain IMPD officers?
Well, a lot of the attrition is the result of retirements. Once an officer has served long enough and had their retirement vested, I don't blame them for taking advantage of the hard work and perhaps either moving on to new opportunities. But at the end of the day, it's important to remember that while we have had attrition this year at IMPD, the 2019 operating budget for the city of Indianapolis includes support for 2 entire recruit classes next year. We just graduated a recruit class which will add street officers as we speak. They're being deployed throughout the city, and then 2 additional recruit classes will be added in 2019. So I'm mindful of the fact that prior to me being mayor, we as a community dropped to record low IMPD rank and file street officer numbers, but we're making a comeback, and I'm confident that by the end of 2019, we'll be able to report to the people of the city of Indianapolis that we have netted 150 additional officers from when I started.
And you mentioned that a certain amount of those were just expected retirements, officers who'd been with the department for decades. But there is a discrepancy between the expected number, 69, and 103. What is causing that discrepancy, that difference?
Well, I think that, again, there is the expected number of attritions. Perhaps some officers we've lost to better job opportunities. you'd have to check with the officers themselves as to what their motives were for leaving IMPD, but we will be very aggressive in recruiting new officers. And as I said, with 2 full recruit classes in 2019, which is a bit different than what we've been able to afford in the past, I think you'll see real progress made toward a net increase in the overall number of rank and file officers.
If you are reelected, what will you change about your approach to violent crime?
If I am reelected, well, we're gonna double down on what we're already doing, because I think it's making a difference. The truth is that crime generally has been reduced. The FBI statistics from 2017 indicate that crime generally in Indianapolis has been reduced and gone down. Now, it is also true that the number of homicides have unfortunately increased. But since our investment this past summer of an unprecedented level of commitment to community organizations dedicated to reducing crime, to our grants that are now available so that people can come together as members of the community. There's one thing I've said more than anything else in the 3 years I've served, and that is the police officers and IMPD itself will not solve the gun violence in our city. It's going to take all of us coming together. And so those investments that we have been making over the course of last year and that are scheduled to continue in the budget of 2019, we've actually seen for the last 5 or 6 months a consistently lower number of criminal homicides in each and every month than was the case in 2017. So I think that that's indicative of progress being made as well. And so we'll remain continually committed to that kind of progress.
Are body cameras for police officers part of your vision going forward?
Yeah, I would hope that we will get to a point eventually where body cameras can be deployed. Now, that is not an insignificant cost, and it would have to be budgeted. But I know that the police chief, I know that the FOP, and I know that a lot throughout the community really want to see body cams for all of our officers, for their safety and for a better understanding of the challenges that they face. But it is a question of making sure that the appropriate allocations are made and that we can afford them.
And there are families of Carrier and Rexnord employees across the city who are still hurting after those companies decided to either move or partially move out of Indianapolis. From an economic standpoint, what will you do to help our city grow, and what have you done to help our city grow?
Well, we've been working diligently to help those affected by the Carrier decisions and the Rexnord decisions. At the same time, it needs to be emphasized that substantial investments in our community have been made by tech giants like Salesforce, who's expanded its footprint considerably in our community. The announcement just a couple of weeks ago that the governor and I made with emphasis, the India-based tech giant who's going to be investing millions of dollars in the reconstruction or the construction of their U.S. education center on the site of the old airport terminal. Those are transformative investments that are being made, not to mention speaking of the airport, the investments that FedEx is making out there, the jobs that investment will bring. Those are important steps forward. And so in a collaborative way with our partners in the state, with the Indy Chamber and other organizations here locally, and the collaboration and cooperation of our regional partners, I think that we are working together to make economic opportunity available across central Indiana.
Okay, and we didn't get Amazon's second headquarters. I want to ask you, what did your team offer the company, and why do you feel we didn't get that?
Well, we offered them the best place to locate in the entire country, and they decided otherwise. The truth is that it was a collaborative effort between state and city officials. I do think that we were very competitive. As I know you know, 238 regions from Canada and the United States responded to Amazon's original RFP. We were fortunate enough to make the final 20. I don't know this for a fact, but I have reason to believe that we were in the hunt until the final decision was made. And I think that speaks volumes about the way a community of our size competed with even larger communities throughout the country on an even basis. Yes, we didn't land the ultimate goal, but I think it will help us in the future going through this process that led up to Amazon's decision. It will help our region to more effectively compete for economic development opportunities in the future.
What is it that makes you believe we were in the hunt till the end?
Well, I think that the limited feedback that we received from Amazon, and these are my conclusions, I want to make that clear, but the limited feedback that we did receive from Amazon was they found Indianapolis's application to be extraordinarily compelling, and that there were many aspects of our response to their proposals that certainly caught their attention. The additional information that we were asked to provide after the initial response was made, I think was indicative of the level of interest that they showed in Indianapolis. Now, I want to be clear. I was never in a room with Amazon officials where these things were being discussed. But from the outside looking in, I think that we have reason to believe that Indianapolis competed very well for what was the largest economic development project in our country's history.
Why not release the numbers of what you offered them?
Well, because at the end of the day, I think that it behooves our economic development project going forward for those companies who may be looking at Indianapolis. That specific set of facts was specific to this proposal and really cannot be helpful to any company that's looking at Indianapolis for economic development opportunities in the future. So the benefit is limited to that, and frankly, the entire process was run out of the Indy Chamber. The city and the state were full participants in it, but we weren't driving those decisions in anything other than providing Amazon with the types of incentives available to them. You know, I wish we'd gotten to a point where we were all in a room and those types of incentives were actually being specifically discussed, but I can tell you, I never participated in any of those discussions.
And moving on to potholes, might as well be a curse word in Indianapolis. Caused a lot of headaches last winter and spring, a lot of car damage as well. What will be different this winter and this spring coming up?
Well, Indiana winters tend to be pretty tough on us, but that's not what taxpayers want to hear. They want to hear what you're going to do in the future and how you're going to prospectively address the situation. The council has approved a $126 million investment in road resurfacing and street repair for calendar 2019. The council also passed a comprehensive $500 million road infrastructure investment over the next 4 to 5 years, which I think will help Indianapolis better address our infrastructure challenges, particularly in the winter. And then the council, again, with bipartisan support, supported DPW's recreation of a street maintenance division. 6 crews of 6 individuals who this winter will be charged with the responsibility of preemptively and staying on top of road repair that is in immediate need. So I think that last winter we learned a lot about what deferred maintenance will bring, and so we have committed the type of resources that will allow us as a city to, I hope, better prepare, better stay on top of, and therefore provide commuters with a safer and smoother trip to and from work.
Is there anything else you could have done before last winter to better prepare for that?
Well, look, I don't participate in the blame game. I don't think that's what taxpayers want to hear. The deferred maintenance over the course of many years, and it really is the result of many years of overlooking or ignoring the immediate needs of our road infrastructure. But again, I want to be the kind of mayor that doesn't look back. I want to be the kind of mayor that sees the problems as they exist today and proposes solutions for how we resolve them in the future.
I want to move on to the topic of panhandling. We've heard a lot of discussion about that lately. Councilor McNicholas has introduced a potential what could become an ordinance. Do you foresee some action being taken on that within the next year?
Well, the proposal that Councilor McNicholas offered, I think in September, on Monday night of this week, was withdrawn by the council. They formally withdrew it, dismissed it, and it will no longer be on their agenda. That was a decision that the council collective made with, I think, the support of Leader McNicholas. Now, what we do on a go-forward basis, the council is currently considering a proposal that would not only meaningfully address those who find themselves in positions of chronic homelessness, particularly in the Mile Square, with economic development, workforce development opportunities to give them job opportunities that currently they may not have. We, I think, are considering at the council level funding to increase police presence in the Mile Square so that the residents here in the downtown area and people who work downtown can see police officers more frequently, to have a greater sense of security than perhaps they currently have. And then ultimately, the city is engaged in a long-term process manifest by our 400 challenge to find 400 units of permanent supportive housing available to 400 people who find themselves in positions of chronic homelessness. And we will continue that effort to find more units. The challenge is not only to find the units and not only to provide rental assistance, to have those units made available to those who find themselves in chronic homelessness, but also provide the social services necessary so that those who have been living in a homeless situation will be able to smoothly transition into their own apartment or to their own shelter that they can call their own home.
And I want to talk a bit about some of the neighborhoods that have seen revitalization. For example, 16 Monon. There's a lot of folks out there asking the question, when's my turn? When will my neighborhood see this surge? What's your response to that?
Well, I think that that's been driven by the fact that Monon 16 has really embraced the Lift Indy designation. I know that the Old South Side, which was our 2018 Lift Indy designated neighborhood, I've heard from neighborhoods all around Indianapolis, how do we get involved in that process? And as you know, the city is committed to continuing to lift Indy neighborhoods up by a transformative investment, one neighborhood per year. That's not saying, though, that the city administration and the city itself is not engaged in helping try to lift all other neighborhoods. A good example of that is in our neighborhood infrastructure partnership, where DPW is partnering with neighborhoods to match neighborhood dollars so that infrastructure projects can be accelerated in neighborhoods. It's in keeping with our process of addressing dilapidated homes, 2,000 of them, who have been radically transformed or demolished over the last 2 years. So across the board, there is a lot of investment going on throughout Indianapolis in our neighborhoods. Our streetlight program is another example of neighborhood investment. But the Lift Indy program has been transformative for Monon 16. I hope that the Old South Side will begin to see the benefits of that kind of investment, and we look forward to those designations in the future.
I don't know how much time you've had to think about or strategize about this upcoming campaign. Do you think it will emphasize, to the same extent as the last one, your history as a prosecutor and your goals on fighting crime?
Yeah, public safety will remain a priority. It has been a priority in this administration. It will remain a priority if the people of Indianapolis want me to serve a second term. And frankly, the fact that I bring with me to this job a sensitivity to the level of crime and its effect during the 4 years I served as the federal prosecutor. I do think that that's a benefit, but at the end of the day, we have come together as one city, working together, Republicans and Democrats alike, to put together a comprehensive program for revitalization of neighborhoods, for economic empowerment of those who find themselves in poverty, and for a comprehensive criminal justice approach that I think will be transformative in the future. And if a re-elected mayor, that's exactly the kind of process that I want to continue.
Anything else you want to add, Mayor? Anything we haven't touched on?
I think we've covered a lot in a short period of time. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, good to see you.
Tim, of course.